So starting up our empty Blender file, we can just select everything and delete it, and we can proceed and block out our scene. Before every sculpting, I try to get as close as possible to the shape I want to create. I know there are these sculpting gurus there that can basically create everything they want from a ball of clay, but I recommend the approach where you just use standard modeling techniques to get close to the shape you want to create, but as fast as possible, you know, not dwell on details or topology or anything. So you basically just bash together something from a basic object, you know, or use skin modifier on some like organic complex shape and stuff like that. So you get close to the shape you want to create and then remesh it and proceed to sculpting. That's probably the most efficient and safe option, in my opinion. So I will now create a low poly blockout of the whole scene, and then we'll proceed and sculpt this object one by one. So first of all, let's add a circle. We'll start with the tower creation. So let's press Shift A and add a circle, and we need to modify the number of segments. So let's expand this model window and let's set 12 segments there. And now we can tab into the edit mode, and let's scale this up a little bit. So I'll press S and scale it up to something like 1.4. You can see the number values in the top left corner, so I will confirm it. And now press F to create a face in the circle, and let's extrude. So press E and let's extrude something like 2.8 maybe. Okay, let's confirm. And now let's scale this down. So press S and create a slope like this. Okay, and I want to create some kind of ring near the top. So instead of sculpting that particular detail, we can just create it here while in the mesh modeling. So let's press Ctrl R, create a new loop here and move it towards the top like this. And now press Ctrl B to bevel. Okay, just like that. And now we can press Alt E, extrude faces along normals and extrude it out. And you can see there is this little slope there. So we can easily fix that just by going to the face select mode. So let's press 3 for face select, alt click this top loop. Let's press S to scale, Z to limit on the Z axis, and 0 to flatten it out. Let's confirm with the enter or left click. And now let's do the same thing at the bottom. So alt click the loop, let's press S, Z and 0. And we now have the flat surfaces there. And the ring copies the slope of the whole tower. So that'll be it for the shape of the tower. Let's select the top face, hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it. We want to use that location for new objects. And now just tab out and let's call this tower. I'll try to be tidy in the scene, so I'll try to name all the objects. Now let's name this tower and we can proceed to create a roof. And first thing I want to create there is kind of a log structure all around. So we'll start by adding a cube. Let's press Shift A and add a cube. Let's now tab in and scale this down. And as you maybe already know, the reason why I always tab into the edit mode when I want to scale the object is because that's the phase where I'm defining the shape of the object. So I'm not trying to accommodate it to its context. You know, I'm trying to define the actual shape of the object. So that's why I go into the edit mode and do scales along, I don't know, like single axis and stuff like that. And that's exactly what I want to do right now. I want to scale this on x-axis. So let's rotate this a little bit so we better see it from the side. Let's press S, then X and scale it up. So it's kind of a half of the tower, something like this. And now we can tab out and try to move it in place. So let's press 1 on a numpad, or you can use the tilde key on your keyboard to select the front view. And let's move it to the side a little bit and rotate. So something like this. And here I can see this is maybe too bulky, so I will go back into the edit mode and let's press S and X twice to enable scaling on the local axis. And let's scale it up a tiny bit and then scale the whole thing down. Okay, tab out and let's move it in place a little bit better. So this is the phase where you're basically deciding how bulky you want your objects to be. It's part of the stylization process, where basically the more out of proportions, the more bulkier or thicker or thinner, for the matter, you make your objects in contrast from their real world counterparts, the more stylized, the more cartoonish, or more toy-like your scene will feel. So I think this will work just fine. And now I want to distribute it around the tower, and there's a really simple trick for that. Sometimes I use array modifier if I want to distribute something procedurally or in the spiral, but here I just want link to duplicate all around the tower, so then later when we sculpt and edit the single log, all of the others will update. And there's really easy trick to do that. Just go to the top view now by pressing number 7, and let's hold period on the keyboard to switch to the 3D cursor pivot point. So now if we press R, we can rotate it like this. And as you maybe already know, we can chain commands in Blender. It's a very effective way to do things. And here we'll need to chain some commands together so we can actually distribute it around. So make sure you don't miss any command here. So now I want to press Alt D to duplicate. That will start that link to duplication process. But instead of placing this anywhere in the scene, you can see I haven't clicked yet. I will press R to enable rotation and enter 30 degrees. And now I can press enter. So we chained two commands. We basically create link duplicate and then immediately chained the rotation 30 degrees and confirmed. And now if we don't do anything else and don't click anywhere, we can repeat the last command by pressing Shift R. So press Shift R, and just like that you can distribute this around your scene. And these are all link duplicates, so if you go into the edit mode, you can see you can edit them all at once. And this is exactly what I wanted. It's very easy to distribute it like this in the circular way and without any hassle with the modifiers, and the relative object rotation and stuff like that. So kind of neat trick. And now we'll proceed and add the roof shingles. So let's press Shift A and let's start with the cylinder. And I want to modify this to 8 segments. And let's name this shingle. And immediately after I promised I will be tidy, I forgot to name the logs. So we'll fix that right now, and I will select this cube object and shift click here to select all of them. And there's easy way how to do a bulk edit. So I'll press Ctrl F2 to start the batch rename command, and instead of find replace, I will switch this to set name, and instead of suffix we want to set new name, and let's call this log and confirm. And you can see it will rename all the objects with the numerical suffix. And now let's select this cylinder and let's rotate it in the object mode right now. So I'll press R, Y 90 degrees. I don't want to edit the shape of the object or the actual rotation in the edit mode. And now I will move this up a tiny bit. So let's press G then Z and move it up. And let's not forget that we have our pivot switch to the cursor. So just to be safe, we can hold the period on the numpad and switch to medium point. And now we can tab in and scale this down to an actual shingle size and scale it on X. And let's look from the top how that looks. So press 7 on the numpad and maybe a little bit larger and maybe a little bit more on the X. So I'll press S and X. Scale this up. Okay, and now tab out, press G, then X and move it to the side, and maybe a little bit larger here, something like this. And now to actually make a roof shingle out of it, we can go back to the edit mode. Let's rotate this a little bit and delete these caps. So I will select them and press X, delete faces, and on the other side as well. And now let's select these bottom faces. So this one here, and control click here and delete them as well. So this is what we are left with. And right now I want to press A to select all, Alt E and extrude faces along normals, and let's do that inside. And you can hold Shift for some small increments like this. And again, Depending on how stylized you want this to be, you can do this more bulky, or thinner. I have something like this here. And just to be safe, we can fix those normals. We don't know if they are facing outside or not. So let's press A and press Shift N to recalculate normals. And now let's tab out and go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad, and we'll do similar thing as with the logs. So let's press R to rotate this and put it in place somewhere here. Maybe not that steep. And we can maybe scale it up again on its local axis. So tab in, and since we didn't rotate it in the edit mode, it's still Z axis here. So let's press S, then Z twice, and scale it up like this. Now tab out, let's go to the top view by pressing 7, and again we'll switch to the cursor. So hold period on the keyboard, switch to 3D cursor, and now we'll press Alt D to link duplicate, R and 15. Let's confirm, and let's press Shift R until we complete the full circle. Then don't worry about the size right now. And now we can select the original one, and since we kind of eyeballed that rotation, I wanted 2 shingles per log, but I didn't actually know what size they need to be to match those angles. So the viable option here was to distribute them like this, and now we can tab in, press A to select all, press S to scale, and limit this only for X and Y local axis. So let's press Shift Z and Shift Z again to limit on the local X and Y axis, and now we can scale them like this. And let's leave it like that so they like barely touch here. And now we can update the top here. So let's go to the local view for a second so they don't obstruct each other, and let's just select these 4 faces right here, and let's exit the local view by pressing slash on the numpad. And now let's just scale this down to match that slope, just like this. If you feel like they're too long, you can always press G twice and slide them down like this, and I will do that. I think they're too long. And be careful, sometimes the slide might do like weird glitches, but all in all it should work just fine. Okay, let's tab out. So these are the shingles easily distributed around the scene as a link duplicates. And now we can rotate this a little bit and select them all and basically just check it out whether they match the roof proportions we want. So let's switch back to the medium point and maybe make this a little bit larger. Move it down or up. Okay, just like this. Now I want this tower to have like a 2-part roof with a wooden ring here. So let's add a new circle by pressing Shift A. Choose circle from the mesh menu, and let's leave this at 12 segments and just move it up right about here. Let's tab in and let's scale it down a little bit by pressing S, then press F to fill, I to inset. So we want to create that ring structure, and let's delete that inside face. So press X, delete faces. Let's select all again by pressing A and extrude it up like this. Let's tab out and we can maybe move it in place a little bit better. So we want something like this in place, and let's call this wood ring. Now we'll need to add a second row of these shingles. So let's select one of them here on the side. Let's look from the front by pressing 1 on the numpad. And let's press Alt D and duplicate it up like this. And we'll probably need a little bit steeper angle here. So let's press R and rotate it a tiny bit like this and place it better towards the edge. And now we'll repeat the steps we used to distribute the first row. So let's go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad. Let's hold period on the keyboard to switch to the 3D cursor. And let's press Alt D to link duplicate, R, then 30 degrees. We want to increase the number because we cannot fit so many shingles right here. Let's press enter. And now just Shift R to distribute around the scene. And Here we cannot just go into the edit mode and modify them because we want them to be linked with the first row. So we'll have to do the best we can to transform them in the object mode to fit their new environment. So let's now switch to median point and let's have a look. This isn't so bad, so we'll just probably need to scale them up. So select this top row by dragging selection around them. And now if we would scale this, it will scale just like a single object. So we'll need to use different method, and we can just affect the location of the objects by using transform, and that's the option you can find right here in the options for the transform, and you can check the locations, or there is a shortcut. If you hold period and switch between the pivot points, you can see there's only locations item here, and it's a checkbox, so it's a toggle. So if you just release here, it's now active, and now if you press S and scale, you are basically just dragging them out or closer together, and that's what I want to do right here, so these endpoints touch a little bit better. And now when you do that, you can just hold the period again, switch off only locations, and scale them as a single object out so they better cover the roof there. And now just press G then Z and move them up like this. So these are just a few simple tricks that you can use to distribute a single object around your scene, and you know they're still all linked. So if you edit one, you edit all of them at once. If you sculpt on one, they all get sculpted, so that will be very useful later. And now to finish up with the roof, we can create another circle. So let's press Shift A and add a circle, and let's set this to 32 segments because we want a higher resolution there. We'll use some auto smoothing there. This object won't be sculpted. We'll need a little bit higher fidelity there, and the placement is fine, I think. So let's just go into the edit mode by pressing tab. Let's press A to select all, press E then Z to extrude it up like this, and press S to scale it down to create a slope. So this will be kind of an underlying roof structure. It will provide us with some shadows, so in case we use some lighting there is not light coming through the roof. We want the space underneath the shingles dark, so this will help us achieve that. And now we can move this up a tiny bit, scale it up optionally, and let's press E then Z again to extrude it up like this. Now let's go to the face select by pressing 3, Alt click the loop, and we'll press Alt E and extrude along normals to create a shape like this. Confirm, and now let's press Ctrl R to add a loop in the middle, right click to release, and S to scale it up to create a shape like this, and Alt click the loop inside, and we'll continue the extrusion. We'll do one more ring like this, only smaller. So let's press E then Z, extrude it up, let's scale it down, and we can try to match the slope here. And now E and Z again to create another ring. Let's go to the face select again by pressing 3, Alt click the loop, Alt E and extrude faces along normals, something like this. Ctrl R in the middle, release, so that's the same thing over, and let's press S to scale it up. And again, we want to try to match the slope, at least approximately. Now again, select this top loop, and we'll do another extrusion, so E and Z, push it up like that. And right now we'll just scale it down to match the slope. And one more extrusion, E then Z, to create some kind of spire like this. Let's see the proportions. This looks fine, so let's scale it down and press F to cover that. So this will be our spire, and now hold Shift S to snap cursor to select it. Let's tab out, and let's press Shift A, and if you have the extra objects add-on active in the preferences, you can add the round cube and just switch the preset to quad sphere, reduce the number of divisions to 4. Let's tab in and scale it down like this to create some kind of ball at the end there. Okay, and let's rename this to orb. And this one here we can call roof. And if you hover over the outliner and press period on the numpad, you will focus your cursor on the object, same as in the viewport, so that's very useful to know. And now let's just enter the name roof. And one last thing we need to do for the tower here is to create some kind of entrance. So let's zoom out a little bit, and now let's select the tower object, tab in, and we'll just place the cursor here. So select this vertex and place cursor to select it. I use this all the time when I need to align something with an object. I just select either edge or vertex on that object and snap the cursor there, so I know that I'm centered on that object. And now let's press Shift A, let's add a plane, let's scale this down like this, and maybe additionally on the x-axis as well, and let's move it on X. So let's press G, then X, and move it to the side here like this, and we'll add a mirror modifier. So let's go to the modifiers tab, add modifier, and we'll add the mirror modifier, and let's leave it at x-axis and enable clipping. That's important when we actually touch some geometry in the middle, that it will merge. And now we can additionally scale this down, so press S, scale it down tiny bit, and maybe on the y-axis as well. And let's press G then Y to move it a little bit inside like that, so you have something similar. And now press E and extrude, and we'll just select the side edge here. So let's go to the edge select this edge here, press G then X, and move it out. And we can see here we are not overlapping with the tower, so we can select all and scale it back on the y-axis and actually push it inside more. So press G then Y and push it inside like this. Okay, now go back to this edge, we can modify this, maybe push this more inside. So I'm not giving you any exact numbers because, you know, this is all about like style finding and determining the shape. So it's good to have a little bit practice in that, to try to eyeball things on your own and do your own adjustments based on what you actually like. So let's select this top face here, and we'll extrude it a tiny bit like this. And now alt click this loop here, and let's press Alt E, extrude faces along normals. Don't forget to press S for even scaling, and do small extrusion like that here. Now select this top face, let's delete it, press X and delete faces. Now go to the edge select this loop here, and let's look from the front, and we'll press E to extrude, but don't touch it in the middle, leave it like this. And now we'll rotate it a little bit, and now press G and move it inside, and this will join it nicely. And now we can press S and Z to adjust the angle, and we now have a nice entrance shape. Maybe it's a little bit too high up, so let's tab out, let's press S to scale it down a tiny bit, press Ctrl A and apply the scale. And now let's look from the front, tab in, look from the front by pressing 1. We can toggle the X-ray, so hold Z, toggle X-ray, go to the vertex select all of these, and we can move it maybe more to the sides there to create a wider entrance. Okay, something like this. Okay, I really like it so far. Maybe again we need to adjust this side here, so press S then Y and scale it up a tiny bit and move it inside. So press G then Y and move it inside. So, you know, you can play with the shape however you want and find something that you really like. And now I will just select this vertex right up here, hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it again. Let's tab out and let's add another object, so press Shift A and add the cube. Let's tab in, scale it down so it kind of covers this area here, and let's move it inside, so press G then Y and move it like this. And let's scale it on X as well, press G, then Z, and move it down. And we can scale it up even more. Okay, and right now I want to create a new cut here in the middle. So Ctrl R, create a cut and move it a little bit up. Now go to the edge select these two edges, press S and scale them on X. And we'll do the same for the bottom edges. So select these two, press S and scale them on the X axis like this. Okay. And again, we can select all and adjust the size a little bit, push it up or down until you like the result. So this is kind of my shape. You know, you can see how far it is from this top ring here and how wide that is. So you can use that as guidelines on how to model your shape. We can now tab out and shift click the gate and press Ctrl J to join it. We don't need that as a separate object, and let's rename this to gate. And right now the only thing left to do for easier manipulation is select all by pressing A, shift click the tower, and let's press Ctrl P and object to parent everything to the tower. So in case we want to move it in our scene, we can just move the whole object by pressing G. And let's reset the cursor here, Shift S, cursor to world origin, and we'll continue in the next chapter with the rest of the environment.